Hello, my name is David Sim. I'm a lecturer in US History. I'm also a admissions tutor at UCL History. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. To my left, your right, we've got Fleur Elkerton, who is a second-year historian taking BA History. To my right, Dr. Valentina Arena, who's a reader in ancient history, specialises in teaching the Roman Republic. What we're going to do this morning is I'm briefly going to sketch out what we offer as a department, what we do as a department, and then we have questions. We have questions that you've submitted already online that we'll address, we'll work through. If you have any questions as we're talking, anything that we say that you want further information on, or anything that occurs to you that might be interesting or worth discussing, then please do post your questions. We'll try and get through as many of them as we possibly can over the next 45 minutes now. So to tell you a little bit about the department, we are based in Bloomsbury, in central London. We have about 200 students in each year, undergraduate students that is, and we offer a couple of different degrees. So we offer a 3-year history degree, we offer 2 4-year degrees, one history with a European language, and one history with a year abroad, and we also offer a degree in ancient history. We're quite an unusual department in that respect. So one of the few history departments in the country that houses ancient history and modern history together in one history department. It makes us really, really broad, I think really intellectually quite an exciting department. So we teach everything from about 2000 BC to 2017. And you can dip in and out of that as you see fit in the course of the degree. So it's super flexible chronologically. We also offer a wide geographic spread. So we have historians the Western Hemisphere, the Eastern Hemisphere. We have historians who work on modern Europe, Britain, of course, modern United States, but also historians of Africa, of China, East Asia generally, and of other parts of the world. So we're very, very broad history department. What I thought we'd do is work through some of the questions that you've submitted already. Some of those I'll try and answer. Some expertise might be needed here. So to take the first one first, is living in London as a student really expensive? Which is probably a question best directed at you.
Yes, but I think it's all about being sensible for yours. So, get to know about your student finance, and you will be eligible for double the maintenance fee as a public student. And it's also about, as I said, being sensible, shopping little, don't shop at Rachel's. You get to know about budgeting quite quickly in terms of things like go to student bars, don't go to ones on the main hostels, like boxes to splurge because you get all of your student finance. So it's more on you, I'd say, in terms of expense. Things you can't avoid expense-wise, and things like travel. So you can get a student Oyster card, but you can link with your student rail card as well to get like extra discounts on pays for it, and top up and travel cards. There are loads of other discounts and apps and things that you can get, like uni days. There's discounts on practically everything. I think what else in terms of, and I know that UCL as well. You can look on the website, and there are like bursaries and financial aid that are available. So you can look on that if you're worried. There's extra price, but then there's also like eligibility information on those things.
I mean, there's no escape.
No, as I said, but I think it's all about weighing up in terms of like what you can get out of living in central London, the opportunities, the institutions, the way of life. Really, you'll find I'm biased, but really, I think it's definitely worth it.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, and absolutely, there's more information on the UCL website about the sources of finance that might be available to you if that's something that you're considering and interested in pursuing. Okay, you've actually got a follow-up question.
Oh, really? Okay.
Is living follow-up to is living in London expensive, but how might international students who aren't very affluent survive with high living costs? So I guess there might be a similar response there in terms of budgeting.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm not really starting to I don't know anything about this. I imagine again, looking at some information on this website, so a lot of international students will get
Actually, I did come to UCL as an international
Oh,
student, and from what you have said, it's identical. For me, it was very much the balance between the great opportunities to be in London from all perspectives, and the cost of it, and when you can play around with things, and you learn quite quickly.
Yeah.
But there's so much to offer, and there are different ways. Yes.
Grand. Okay. What else we got here? What do UCL history graduates do after they graduate? So, lots and lots of different things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as with any high-end humanities degree, history degree. Oh, you want me to apologize? Very apologies for any bad sound. We're working on it. It should be back in the morning. Ask again about what students do after they graduate. So apologies for losing you there for a moment. Back now. The question that we were just about to answer was what the history graduates do after they graduate. And our graduates tend to do a really, really wide range of things. So a lot of the professions you would expect to see get represented in what our graduates do. Many go into law, many go into journalism, many go into public policy and government jobs, civil service and things like that. many go into city jobs, business roles as well. But partly to do with where we are and the kind of connections that we have as an institution, lots of our students get into kind of more niche work. So, for instance, lots will go and work for NGOs or small charities, jobs where it's actually quite hard to break into unless you've had some prior experience. So one of the benefits of doing a history degree with us, I think, is that you're located in a place where you can pick up over the 3 or 4 years that you're with us lots of opportunities, lots of internships, often paid internships, with companies and sectors where it can be quite hard to break in if you haven't already had that experience. So in recent years, I've had students who've done internships with Guardian, The Independent, internships at Amnesty International, and then they've gone on to work in those fields afterwards. And the in that they get whilst they're a student, I think really helps them when they graduate, because they can say, look, I've got a high-end degree from a really serious history department, plus, of course, in my 3 or 4 years, I've also picked up this additional experience, which I think is something that not a lot of institutions can offer their students. I think it's a really, really wonderful thing. I don't know if you've maybe thought of future career prospects. Or...
A little bit, but I do very much, I'd agree. I mean, I'm interested in the art sectors in general, so things like curation, and yeah, I'd be really grateful to get some more opportunities. There's a volunteering services unit online, the UCL Students Union, that they advertise some opportunities all the time in loads of different fields. So you can get things up from there. I definitely have a local charities overseas, and then generally you can research and you can do things like quite big name institutions because you're quite near them. Projects and things like those things I'm interested in. There's like the Victoria Museum, the National Theatre, I do music over
Or the British Museum.
or the British Museum,
It's
which
just
is just around the corner.
yeah.
And
I mean, it really is. It's to do with location, just where we are. It's wonderful for that kind of thing. All right, what else have we got here? So, is there a support system that helps students attain internships? So, as you mentioned, it's a volunteer service. That's uni, right?
Yeah, that's like volunteering, but it's not like sort of formalised internships. That's more things like volunteering charities and museums.
I mean, there is a UCL careers service.
There is, yeah.
And there's also a designated person within the history department who is each year coordinates careers events in the department.
Yeah, and the UCL careers do like 3 years so we have different sectors, different groups, and they do it much more. And I think you can get like one-on-one reduce the yeah, and so there's support there. But I think also just having the motivation to Google and test yourself is really good because again I did that last year and I managed to get placement in like heritage careers just from on the basis of like
And there's also contacts. I realised I'm thinking about the British Museum. The traditionalists have worked at the British Museum, or we have some contacts with them, so sometimes it's also easier just to say, I've got this brilliant student.
yeah.
All right, the subject is history. Next question. What course options are open to me if I take the history degree? Do I need an ancient language?
You don't need an ancient language. So you can come without any prior knowledge of Latin or Greek. If once you are here, if you wanted, you would be able to take any of the ancient languages, including Akkadian or Hittite, but it's not compulsory either. And one of the greatest things about doing ancient history here is that, as you mentioned, we have from the nearest, we cover from the nearest down to late antiquity, as well as we are in a history department, so you can do an ancient history degree and at the same time think comparatively and see what's happening in America and the building of empires in different ways and different times in history. So I would say the two main advantages.
So, as an ancient historian, you do a dissertation in ancient history?
Yes, that would be one of the requirements. So your special subject would be in ancient history, and that would be also, for example, in first year, writing history would be attached to an ancient history subject. So there are elements where if you wanted and you wanted to specialize only in ancient history, this is sort of what you can do. You can also take courses in the Institute of Archaeology in the classics department, and never leave outside from the ancient world, as well as to the opposite, and branch out as much as you want. Really being the main core of ancient history.
It's really impressive. Okay, so related to, you mentioned taking courses outside the department. Someone's asked here, is UCL part of London University's intercollegiate scheme? Can I study modules in second, third year of different London universities? The answer is yes. So,
flow there.
Now.
Apologies if we lost you there again. I think we're back with you now. I was giving it the hard sell about intercollegiate modules, for which I apologise. But we are part of an intercollegiate scheme. It broadens the number of options available to you as an undergraduate here, which I think is just a good thing. I know what have you taken any intercollegiate modules so far?
I haven't done any outside of UCL, but in my first year I did 2 half modules from the History of Art department. So I sort of had to take upon me actually the summer before I even came to UCL, and I emailed the History Department, the History of Art department to sort of organise that for myself. Whereas obviously in the second and third years, because you know the system a lot better, it is a little bit easier. But it is possible. So if you're looking at maybe if in first year, if you want to do like a language or something outside of history, it's possible for sure.
Okay, we have a bunch of questions.
Oh, wow.
Okay. How does UCL go about breaking in inverted commas, their history freshers into writing university level essays?
Oh,
Are there workshops available for this?
yes.
I'm glad that you asked. So in our first year, every first year takes 2 modules. One is called Making History. Maybe we can talk about that in a moment. The second is called Writing History. And as the name describes, that is about the process of writing history essays. So what you'll get over that first term is an intensive tutorial-based course, which will be linked with one of the other modules that you've chosen, so you won't come to it with no prior information, which will be explicitly focused on helping you to produce university-level writing. It will teach you the expectations of what an essay should look like. It will teach you about citation and referencing. It will teach you about using historiography. It will teach you how to use a reading list. So we'll give you a reading list. How do you work through that? What do you need to look for? How should you go about answering the question that you've been set? And the response from students has been very positive. This is a good thing. We think it really helps make that difficult transition from A-level writing to first-year undergraduate writing. I'm going to ask you again, apologies. But
that's all right. Yeah, so did you say you do it in quite small classes? I think I had like maybe 3 or 4 other people, so it's quite like a intimate, personal coaching almost through your first university level essay. Yeah, there's also something called the Writing Lab, It's not, so you have writing history, but then all year round, for all 3 years of your degree, there's something called the UCL Writing Lab, where you can book an appointment with them and ask them specific questions, either about like essay writing or referencing. I remember I went along because I had a really complicated reference from something in the British Library. I had no idea where to start, and they really helped me out with that. So that's for like specific questions once writing history's ended, I'd say.
So one of the things we want to do is manage that transition from A-level to first year. It can be quite a big jump.
And also if you're taking a year out, which I did, so I had done essay writing pretty much for a whole year, so that really helped, transition you back in, not just from A-level, but from having a complete break from all too.
Fair enough. Because it can be quite a gap, so we're conscious of that, and we've designed our first year curriculum to be attentive to that and address that particular need. Okay. Why is a very general question? Why is studying history at UCL better than other universities? I mean, there are all kinds of reasons why it's better than studying at other universities. It's a heavyweight history department, so it's routinely ranked at or near the top in the UK rankings and international rankings. We have just a wonderful array of scholars working in the department. It's a fantastic place to study, partly because it's intellectually brilliant, partly though also because it's a very democratic place to work, I think. It's a very open door. I think students work very closely with academics. There's a kind of reciprocal respect there. Academics really involve students in the research that they're doing. We try to focus on research-informed and research-led teaching, and I think that's very healthy. You can always meet with the people teaching you outside the structures of the course. So everybody has office hours. You can always go along and ask questions. And I think that openness, that kind of democratic style makes it distinctive from other history departments. I would also re-emphasize something we mentioned earlier, geography, where we are. I would bet that there is no greater concentration of galleries, museums, libraries, educational institutes, archives anywhere in the world than there is within 2 square miles of where we're sat right now. I think it's literally the strongest concentration of those things on Earth, and that just opens up all kinds of opportunities for you as a historian. We use those archives in your very first term here. You'll study Making History, this module that I mentioned. It will use global archives that are walking distance away from the department. It's really just an incredibly rich neighborhood to work in as a historian. And you can study any aspect of history, any part of the world. You can study any period from right here in Bloomsbury. And I think that is quite distinctive as well. As Valentina mentioned, we're like 3 minutes from the British Museum. If you're walking at a decent pace, just no distance at all. It's on your doorstep, and that informs the teaching that we do, that informs the subjects that you take, and that, I think, makes us quite distinctive. Really giving you the hard sell here. Apologise. All right. What we got here? Is there scope to study a language? Yes, there is. What's first-year student accommodation like?
Oh, looks to me. Should I just carry on with it again? It depends.
I can make it up, but it won't be very convincing.
There are lots of different halls. So there's not like one flat answer to that question particularly. So when you decide that you need accommodation for your first year, you apply and you can rank things that are your priorities. So things like proximity to UCL, like whether you're happy to share a room or not, things like that. And then they sort of assign one for you, so you don't look at all of them and have to choose or anything like that. What are they like? Normally, most people I know have a really, really, really good time. I promise. Some of them are slightly further out, so some of them might be in Camden, some of them might be very close to campus, but you're guaranteed a half an hour walk in maximum for your first year accommodation. I'm trying to think what else to say. What is it like? Most of the time it's kind of little flatlets that you're sharing. They can be between about 4 to, I shared with about 16 people. But don't worry, we had a very large kitchen area, so it was actually completely fine. People just tend to get freaked out when I say 16 people. Social life is really, really good. But I think also it's really important to, I think a lot of people get very focused on halls and think, oh no, well, if I don't make all my friendship group in my flat, like I sort of, it's not the university experience. Like I promise it's okay. I think I've made some great friends from halls, but also I made loads of really good friends from my course and from societies. I think it's just important to have that in mind as well. But yeah, mostly accommodation is absolutely fine. You should be able to walk in, and yeah, I can't think of anything else. Catered, self-catered. So some people, it's completely up to you. So you might want catered, where you get, I think it's 2 meals a day put on for you, a bit like sort of at school lunches, that sort of thing, but for breakfast and dinner, I think, usually. And then, or you can go self-catered, where obviously you were just provided with a kitchen and you have to do it yourself. And then there's also intercollegiate halls. You might get assigned, I did, so I got assigned to an intercollegiate hall. So that's within the University of London. So there'll be lots of UCL students because of the proximity to UCL, but there might also be King's College students, Queen Mary, LSE, anyone within the University of London, which also like adds for greater diversity if you're meeting interesting people as well. I think that pretty much answers the question.
I had lunch once in Ramsey Hall, and it was really good.
Right. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
And you have some famous like alumni, like I think Coldplay met at Ramsey.
Do you want to boast about that?
Sorry?
Do we want to boast about that?
That's true. I think they filmed a music video there literally like this summer, so there you go.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I take that back. I didn't mean to be snarky. That was very unprofessional. All right. Are there specific fields of history that UCL specialises in? I was told that the history department here specialises in intellectual history, which is, I mean, does have a specialism in intellectual history. There is a cluster of very good intellectual historians working here who teach very exciting courses. What do you think?
Certainly intellectual history is one of the strengths of the department. It's not the only one, but it's certainly one of the most prominent. And what is really good about intellectual history at UCL is that we do cover the whole spectrum. So it's actually one of the few institutions, really in the UK, where there are intellectual historians that cover the ancient world as well, and then take down to even early modern and then modern. So that there is really an historical narrative that can be built, and so. For example, as an ancient historian working on Rome, I found myself supervising at times a dissertation on the American founding fathers and the relation and how they use the concept of liberty, of Roman liberty, in their writing. So I would say certainly intellectual history is one of the strengths. We do also have, however, other kind of histories, as you know very well.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this the other day, like what do we specialise in? I'd say imperial history, I would say ancient history, I'd certainly say intellectual history, actually political history as well, it seems to me, we're pretty strong in. But there's no kind of exclusionary element to this. So it's not the case that if you're not interested in intellectual history, you won't find plenty of courses for you. You will find plenty of courses. We're I guess, a very broad department. And whatever it is, whatever interests you have, whatever interests you bring with you from A-level to first year, I'm sure we'll be able to accommodate those. We'll also be able to introduce you to things that you never even thought of before. Ways of doing history that you never even considered. And I'll confess, that's sort of still happening to me now. So I won't tell you how old I am, but I still, hear colleagues give papers or lead seminars. You know, we sit in on each other's seminars now and again. You know, I sit in on lectures and I'm just amazed by the kind of history that they're doing and the questions that they're asking and the way they're answering them. It's just wonderful and it's really, really exciting. So yes, we do specialize in particular things, but no, that's not an exclusionary thing. Okay. Well, why does UCL have an A-star to AAA entry requirement when other London unis, such as LSE and KCL, I think that's King's, only require AAA? We are advertising A-star AA to AAA this year, but we are only making offers at AAA. And next year that will be gone. So it will be a straight AAA offer if you apply to us in this UCAS cycle. Just to clarify that. So we will be on a par with LSE and King's in that respect. Okay, are there history societies that are available to join? And if so, how active are they? There are 2 history societies. Do you belong to?
I'm in history, and I've been to some ancient history. They're quite active, I'd say. Obviously, it does depend year on year who's running it because the committees get re-elected every year. But this year, History Society have done really fun, like bar crawls, film nights. I think they might even be planning a trip to Rome, but that's in the works. And then they're also going to be putting on careers events and talks and question and answer sessions with academics, I'd say. So I think you sign up for that at the beginning of term or like sort of maybe after freshers. Also History Society come on your Cumberland Lodge trip, which is a sort of residential at the end of Freshers Week that if you'd like to go on, you go with all your other new colleagues, students, and some academics, and History Society help run like the social aspect of that. And then, as I mentioned, Ancient History Society is also active. They do some really good talks, invite lecturers in. I've been to a couple of those as well, do meetups at the British Museum. And I presume it's similar to History Society in the way you sign up and you have like a annual fee, I think. And there's Facebook groups and pages that you can like to see what they're up to. And I know History Society have quite a good Instagram as well that I find quite amusing. They're quite funny.
That's far too modern. And the Ancient History Society?
Yeah, very similar. You covered it. I think actually first year Ancient History Society are there for free. But yes, so the kind of activity they cover is quite wide ranging. It depends, as you said, it depends each year on the committees, but you know, in the past there have been also a few toga parties. Yes.
Have like a really decent Christmas party, and then they have they're the ones who organise like the big history Easter ball, which is quite a big deal that like all the historians go to, and it was in Camden last year. It was very fun. So yeah, that's quite a big event in the social calendar. So
they do various social events. In recent years, they've also done occasional careers events as well. Inviting back alumni, people who've graduated recently to come and talk about their fields of work and that kind of thing.
And the committees are like obviously people from your degree, so if you maybe had a suggestion or a question for them, you can quite easily get in touch. I'm sure, and as I said, if you find their Facebook pages and send them a message on that, they'd be very happy to get back in touch with you.
Absolutely. Okay, what have we got here? I'm interested in history with a year abroad. Where do people study on their year abroad? So the History with a Year Abroad program is a 4-year program. In your 3rd year, you study abroad, and that's where the name comes from. In general, although not exclusively, people tend to go to North America, and within that, they tend to go to the United States. So we have connections with the University of Pennsylvania, University of California, University of Texas at Austin, which is just an awesome place to study. You should definitely go to Texas, Austin. But we also have placements at various other institutions, Toronto, Santiago de Chile, a couple of universities in Europe, Leiden, Dublin, Amsterdam. So it's quite a wide range of places that you might choose to go to. We're also picking up new institutions in East Asia and Southeast Asia that should come online in the next year or two. So the range is really impressive. All teaching on your year abroad is done in English, so they're all Anglophone institutions. And what you do on that year abroad is really up to you. So we ask that you take half of your modules in history. Beyond that, you can take the other half in whatever you see fit. You can do anything that would be open to a student at that institution. The idea is that it's totally immersive. So you are, for that year, basically a historian at the University of Pennsylvania or Santiago de Chile, and you do the same courses, you do the same selection or range of modules as your friends, your colleagues at that university would do in a normal year. Students who do it have a fantastic time doing it. They often come back raving about the place that they've left, the connections they've made, the friends they've made. Many plan to return after graduation. And actually, I think many come back better historians for having done that year abroad. So they've had an extra year, not just of being a historian and thinking as a historian, but an extra year where they've been taught by a different group of people, they've experienced the kind of different classroom dynamics, different university dynamics, and that I think helps them in their fourth year when they come to think about their final subjects and their dissertation. So it can be a wonderful thing. It's really worth considering, I think. Okay, what is the smallest and largest group sizes you teach in? What's the smallest and largest group sizes you teach in?
So the seminars are capped to 15. So the largest by definition, therefore, in the seminar group, discussion groups is the 4-15. The smallest, I don't know how many.
Writing history would be 3 or 4.
Yeah, it's about 3 or 4.
And so in your final year, if you take, when you take your special subject, that's capped at 12. Mm-hmm. Lectures can be much bigger. So lectures can be whole year lectures for something like writing history, or in your second year you do a course called Concepts. You might have lectures with the full year, which would be 200 people in one lecture room, but you would never be taught in a classroom anywhere close to that. As Valentina says, 15 would be the cap for a seminar. We try to keep numbers down, we try to keep numbers low, because we think that small group dynamic is really, really important. And we try and make sure that every piece of work you submit, every piece of work you write that gets marked, you will get a one-to-one feedback tutorial for. So I guess that's the smallest group size you'd be taught in.
So we do teach also in one-to-one context. So as you mentioned earlier on, we have this open door policy. So many times we sit one-to-one with a student to go over a specific source that might have been a bit more complicated, or rather, complex secondary literature piece, and we discuss it quite extensively, I'd say, in a one-to-one setting. Although this is not part of the structured kind of form of teaching, but it's something that we do consistently throughout the year.
Yeah, absolutely. So that time is there that you can choose to make use of. So our time is yours in that respect. So if you choose to make use of it, that's great. If you choose not to, that's fine too. I mean, do office hours something you've used?
Yeah, definitely. If you have a specific query, especially when it comes to essays and deciding on an essay, or if you've decided on an essay, deciding what direction you want to take it, they're really helpful. I wouldn't say just go in and be like, I don't understand the whole thing. You need to sort of go in with some specifics, and your lecturer will help you through with that, I'd say. Yeah, go in sort of armed with some questions and some queries, maybe a source that you want to discuss. That'd be really helpful.
Yeah, or an essay.
Or an essay, yeah. I mean, not excessively, so you can't sort of go in every day and check in with them, like, how your essay is doing. But, like, if you talk about the idea verbally, maybe what direction you want to take it in, then they can recommend some sources for you to read and look at to help with. Yeah.
Grand. Yes, so I see some of my students, not quite weekly, but maybe fortnightly. I some of my students I don't see at all for a whole year at office hours. It's up to you how you decide to use that time. Okay, can someone change from the 3-year to 4-year with year abroad course at the start of the academic year?
I think so.
In theory.
Technically, I did the
yes.
reverse, so
Yeah.
and that was very simple. So I presume so. I think it's maybe a little bit more tricky, but I think if you're thinking of it, just do it sooner rather than later, I imagine. I wouldn't leave it any later than probably maybe like the November or something, if that.
I think it's easier to move from the 4-year to the 3-year.
That's, yeah. So I'd say if you're in doubt, which is what I was like, I applied for history with a year abroad, and then because I decided to take a year out before I went to university, and that year out I did some thinking, I was like, actually I don't think it's quite for me, it's not quite right for me. So I just sent an email to say I've decided to drop the year abroad, and they were like, that's fine, and just switched me over, and it was all very simple. So I'd say maybe do that if you're not sure, because yeah, it's as David said, it's easier to drop it rather than take it up, I think.
Yeah, because there's usually a waiting list for history with a year abroad.
Yeah.
So sometimes spots open up. For instance, if you were to drop out, that opens up a spot for somebody else to take, so that does happen. But if you're interested in it, I would encourage you to sign up for it in the first instance, just because it gives you kind of security and a kind of definite hold on it that you otherwise might not have. Okay. Is there scope to study a language throughout the degree? Yes, there is. And sometimes people do the same language in each year. So they start as a beginner, and by the end they're proficient, which is really impressive, I think. We're slightly jealous of students who do that. It's a really, really impressive thing to be able to do. Somebody asked...
Ancient as well as modern.
Say again?
Ancient as well
I
as
was going
modern.
to say, somebody else asked about ancient language provision. You've already mentioned some of that. But
yeah,
you
so
can do that in each year? Or?
Yes, you can do it in each year. So you could start as if you have done some before, you then you are assigned to the level. So let's say intermediate for sake of argument. But you can also start from beginner in your first year, and you can carry on down to the third. You can start with Latin, and then perhaps second year. Thinking perhaps Greek is what you want to specialize on, and also you're thinking about special subjects, say to specialize in Greek history later on, and so you want to switch to ancient Greek. That's also possible, as well as all the other range of ancient languages. So it's not strictly focused on the classical world. And this is easily done across the road, Department of Greek and Latin.
I mean, it's obviously taking the language is a wonderful thing. As Valentina says, it can open up things especially in your final year, when you're starting to think about your dissertation, you're starting to think about what sources might be available to use. If you have another language, it can open up new avenues. And I say that as someone who hasn't spoken Spanish since A-level quite some time ago. But it can be a wonderful thing, a really liberating thing, I think. All right. Someone here asks, I am interested in art history. Can I take art modules from the art history degree with a history BA?
I've done that.
What did you take?
In my first year, I took 17th and 18th century portraiture, and then I took 20th century modernism in architecture, because I'm also very interested in architectural history. And they were two half modules with the History of Art department. So I emailed them, and they explained that they run a course just for students who aren't in the art history department to take art history modules, if that makes sense. I think it's called Art and Architecture in London. And every seminar is taught in situ. So you have it in a different gallery or at a different building if you're doing an architecture one, which I loved because it also meant that you were taking full advantage of your London location. So yeah, and those were just two I picked from the list. They had so many more. They had some earlier ones. I was very tempted to take a 15th and 16th century art one too. So yeah, it's very easy, and I'm sure if you wanted to take that through into second and third year, you'd be able to. But it isn't just the art history department where you can do more art-focused things. I mean, in history now, a lot of the courses I take are in culture, material culture, or you can specialise in visual images. There's also somewhere called SELCS, which is like the School of European Languages and Culture, and you can, which I've only just discovered about, so I'm thinking of doing some stuff there in my last year. And you can do things in visual culture and theatre and film there, if that's something you're interested in too. But like more kind of classical art history, yeah, there are definitely courses you can do in the art.
Yeah, and also the Institute of Archaeology
Oh, yeah, of
has,
course.
you know,
Yeah,
classical
yeah.
art as well.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you know
yeah.
one wants to start from, or have also as part of one's formation on the ancient world, and then move on from
Yeah.
classical art to, you know.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I should say that all of these things are about, I mean, history of art is about 45 seconds from the history department. I mean, all these things are really, really close together.
Yes.
So we're not sending you out to 5 miles across London to study these things. We'll be right on the doorstep. Okay. Questions just come in. Do many students do summer internships related to history during the summer break? And is there support to get work experience for students? So I guess we've sort of already touched on with the...
already touched on that. Like, and I don't know if this person had been listening though before, so yeah, I was talking about talking about things like the volunteering services on the UCL Union website. So once you're a UCL student, you can access that, and that has loads of opportunities like throughout term, but also through the summer holidays. What was it like relating to history? Is that what they said?
Internships related to history.
Yeah, I mean, basically anything you can research and apply for and get a place on. So if you're interested in things related to history, like heritage, curation, things like that, yeah, definitely. But also, I think, you know, don't feel like a massive pressure to do it if not everybody does. You know, lots of people spend their summers like relaxing, traveling, working, which I suppose doesn't really answer the question. But I think it's not just like always like this drive to do internships the whole time. But yeah, I'd say. And what was it? I think there was
Well, is there support to get work experience?
Yeah, as I said, there are those opportunities online in the career services as well. But I think, as I mentioned previously, I think it's also really good to get into the habit of like trying to seek these things out for yourself, especially if it's something a bit more niche in like the arts or heritage sector. They can be a bit more difficult to find. They're not as structured. Things like law internships, I'm finding. So yeah, it's in terms of using the support that UCL provide, but I think like they have sector themed weeks that can give you some pointers. But I think also, yeah, researching yourself, sending emails, inquiring, introducing yourself as a UCL history student tends to open doors, I've already found. Yeah, so it's good to get into the practice of doing that alongside the UCL supported things.
Okay, last question. How many of your undergraduates go on to study at MA level after their undergraduate degree?
So from the BA in Ancient History, I would say half.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a high number.
Yeah, within the ancient history BA, yes, and perhaps there's something to be said in favor of the ancient language, because in order to carry out then MA studies or even further along PhD studies, then the ancient language, if you want to be an ancient historian, is something that you need to have. You would be able to read your sources yourself, to interpret them, to come up with your original way of reading them and answer new questions that you yourself are asking. So in that respect, that is for us.
Lots and lots of students do move from the BA to the MA, and lots take time out and then come back to do MA studies later. So yeah, I would say I don't know what the number would be, but it's quite a popular route. It's quite a popular route. Okay, an additional question. So this will be the last question that's come in. Are there politics modules that are able to be taken alongside the history BA, like the ones just mentioned for art history? Yes, there are. So for any department that you're interested in, and this is true of the history department, also true of other departments at UCL, you can go on the website and you can see the current list of options available to students. Now that list will change each year. We try to make sure that our teaching is always fresh, that we're always teaching to our latest research interests. people also go away to do research, which means they might not be present in the department. So that list can change a little year to year. But it will give you a really good sense of the range of courses on offer, both in the history department and elsewhere. So if you go on the politics website, for instance, you'll be able to click through to their current students' array of courses and just see what they're offering at the moment. And the process would be pretty much the same. You'd arrive and you would make contact with the politics department and ask them about spaces on their courses, and then apply to take them. And that would be, no problem at all. That would be just like taking a course in any other external department. So it's really straightforward. And politics, of course, is one of those disciplines where there's a lot of overlap with history. So lots of students will take politics modules as part of their history degree. Lots of politics students come to us to take history modules. So there's a neat overlap there. And that's true with other disciplines too that you would expect. So anthropology, archaeology, sociology. People move quite easily, I think, between those disciplines.
Jewish and Hebrew studies.
Yeah. And other area studies units as well, I think. People move between. Grand. Okay, we're out of time, more or less. But thank you very much for your questions and for bearing with us when we lost you a couple of times back there. Yes, thank you very much. We hope to see you applying, and we hope to welcome you next year as new students. Thank you very much.